This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Pasterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Hope you had a great weekend. We are back at it on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily today, kicking off a big sports week. Normally, we've got the Jets going on Tuesday and Thursday more often than not. This week, a little different. Big games in Minnesota tonight, LA Wednesday, Vegas Friday, and of course, it is U.S. Thanksgiving, which means we got a triple header of NFL action on Thursday, and then the first Black Friday game with the Chiefs and the Raiders going at it on Friday. So it's a game day edition of WST. We've got two games to break down, a big injury that will create a large hole on the Winnipeg Jet blue line of Dylan Samberg to get to. And Ville Heinola is back and will make his season debut tonight in the lineup of the Winnipeg Jets. We're going to be all over it today. Our pal Rennie, Sean Reynolds, who's back from Nashville on the weekend, is going to join us first up. We'll have Jeff Hamilton jump on the program and sort of wrap last week for the Bombers and the Grey Cup aftermath and take a look ahead into the CFL offseason. And then we'll head to the Twin Cities to tee up tonight's tilt with our pal Jessi Pierce from the Twin Cities. So buckle up. It's going to be a big one. We've got lots of Jets news to get to right off the bat, and we'll hear from Coach Scott Arniel, Ville Heinola, and Neil Pionk from just in the last hour from the morning skate. Huge thanks to the sponsors that make the show happen each and every day. Our friends at Coolbet. Tomorrow is the next Lock Shop Poker Open. Shout out to Randy D, who's now known as Randy River in the chat. He got second place, and Pat actually just told us that the top two finishers in the tournament, in addition to winning, the money that you would get from the tournament based on the prize structure, also 2 seats in a special tournament to qualify for a trip for a poker event in Costa Rica. So anyways, if you haven't played with us before, join us tomorrow night. Starts at 9 p.m. Winnipeg time. We'll give you more details, but if you just go to the coolbet.com, download the poker app, and then check in, just search Lock Shop in tournaments and sign up and join us tomorrow night. We'll have bounties on the heads of myself and Remis and Dusty. It's been a hell of a lot of fun, so hopefully we'll see you there, and we'll have more details on what the top 2 finishers get. Pat just dropped that on us on the Lock Shop. Of course, our friends at Princess Auto, Rolly's Transfer, Manitoba Battery, Fans First, the Winnipeg Jets, Canadian Club, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Little Brown Jug, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, and we'll get to a why not question of the day as well for Not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray. Welcome to everybody in chat. Hope you had a good weekend. And Michael Remis, what's up? How was yours?
Yes. Hello. I'm feeling pretty good. My back's a little sore. Took my son to family skate yesterday and had to carry him around a little. Actually, some people recognized me when I was out yesterday with my kids, so shout out to everyone who said hello. But feeling good here on a Monday as I try to get my camera sorted out.
Yes, a slow start production-wise on a Monday, but we will have Remis join us live in person as well on the show in just a moment. Listen, nice win against the Penguins on Friday. And a tough one on the second end of back-to-backs. I thought Eric Comrie was really good. I mean, I know that anytime you have your backup goalie in and you don't win, there's some people that get their backs up on it. Listen, but I love to see Connor Hellebuyck play every night. Absolutely. We know that that's probably not wise. But it certainly wasn't goaltending that did it. In fact, if we want to talk about goaltending, Reem, for the game on Saturday, I think we got to give some major props to UC Saros, who had a hell of a game in a game that the Nashville Predators just absolutely had to have. I mean, I know when you look at the standings, there was a large gap from the top to the bottom of the league, but that felt like one of those usual Central Division battles of two teams that are relatively close. And I thought the Jets looked good at times. They looked a little gassed at times. But 1-1 on the weekend, moving into a big one tonight against the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, I got to say, Huss, that Pittsburgh, man, did they look rough. The Jets looked like an all-star team, just passing it around on them, moving the puck, playing keep away. I felt bad by the end of the game for Crosby and the Penguins, just how much the Jets absolutely dominated them. And a lot of comments coming out from Jets fans. Rutger McGroarty thinks he's an NHL player and can't crack this lineup. That was the most popular joke among Jets fans. Crazy game, too. Kyle Connor not only fighting, but fighting Sidney Crosby. Pretty
that was bizarre.
Pretty incredible stuff. And I know this might be an unpopular take. I don't blame Crosby. I thought that was interference. I know people like to label that as reverse hits, but that was pretty clear interference to me. And Crosby trying to light a fire under his team. I don't know if it worked, although he did score goal number 600 the other night. Didn't get it against the Jets, thankfully. Hustler didn't get it against the Jets. He did get .1000 against the Jets a couple years ago, but was denied on Friday. So that was a great win. And Saturday, well, we can move on. You know, you're going to lose some games, 17-4. Let's bounce back tonight against Minnesota because we don't really like the Minnesota Wild here, I don't think.
No, and by the way, I think Connor clipped that bit that we were talking about the Wild co-opting the whiteout.
Yes.
My mentions were going off all weekend from
so was
angry Wild fans. And listen, many of them are clueless, having no idea about the origins of this. Just, I mean, like a lot of people, maybe they don't pay a lot of attention to Winnipeg outside of the head-to-head games. But I likened it in a couple of online chats to, well, imagine if the Packers at Lambeau started doing a skull chant before the game.
Yes.
I mean, you know, or calling it something else, but doing the clapping, doing everything. Like, I mean, come on. There's some things that are synonymous with teams. Now, like, who cares if a college team does it or whatever? Listen, if you're trying to do a whiteout, it's a losing battle because there's no one that will do it better than Winnipeg. And as you pointed out, if you have to give out the T-shirts, it doesn't really count. So, anyways, it was fun going back and forth. That is yesterday's conversation. Tonight's conversation, though, is a battle of the number 1 and 2 teams in the NHL. Kind of tough for Amazon that they chose Ottawa-Calgary as their big game tonight, as opposed to Winnipeg, Minnesota, the top 2 teams in the Central, and right now the top 2 teams in the National Hockey League by record.
Yeah, we did talk on Friday's show about how the Minnesota are holding a whiteout. They put out a big banner with the same kind of imagery the Jets use. And yeah, like no one cares. Like people can do it, but it is funny that's a great comparison. That if the Packers started doing the clapping above their head, Minnesota fans would be very upset about that. And we had many people in our mentions from Minnesota. I didn't realize that it was so easy to trigger Minnesota fans. We got a ton of views on that video, which is really good for internet points.
Yes.
So we need to start brainstorming ideas of things to say to piss off certain fan bases. It's called rage bait. I don't really partake in that often, but I can see why people do it because a lot of angry Minnesota fans who, I agree with you, didn't know about the Jets' history. And tonight's game, as you said, you know, the Jets having this incredible start. We've talked about it all year, but you know who's also having a really fantastic start as well? Minnesota. 13-3-4. You know, the Jets, 34 points, 17-4. You think, oh, they must be so far away, ahead in first place. Not quite. Minnesota, only 4 points behind, having a great season, plus 19 goal differential, getting great goaltending from Gustafsson, who actually has a goal this season, and Marc-Andre Fleury, led in that softie the other day against Edmonton, but really rebounded. He's having a solid season, and his backup, duty. The question for Minnesota coming into the game, Kirill Kaprizov, he's been hit. He was hurt. Took a knee from Drake Caggiula in the game against Edmonton. I don't know if Ryan Hartman went out and slashed Podkolzin or one of their young players in the face as retribution. Maybe next game the two teams meet, there will be something like that. But it sounds like he is in the lineup tonight, Kaprizov. So this is the game, and yes, it is on TSN 3 Monday. Usually prime Monday Night Hockey, but they have Ottawa, Calgary, and that's part of this weird NHL schedule this week. As you mentioned, okay, listen to this tonight because of Thanksgiving. 11 games tonight. There was 1 game yesterday, 2 games tomorrow, 15 games Wednesday, 0 games Thursday. That's NFL Day. And then Black Friday, where the Jets have traditionally played in Minnesota on the afternoon and lose. Thankfully, the NHL schedule gave the Minnesota game tonight before Thanksgiving, not after. 14 games Friday starting. I know the NFL is trying to take over every day of the week now, but the NHL has used Black Friday starting at noon Central Time with the Jets with the 7:30 game against Vegas. So busy schedule.
Yeah,
this
so
week.
That's a 5:30 game in Vegas, so a little bit of a different time. And as I mentioned, Chiefs Raiders Friday afternoon as well. One of my favorite weeks of the year as far as for sports goes. I mean, you spread that NFL schedule out from Thursday with 3 games through the weekend, and we've got some great ones. I will say this. I'm with you, and I'm happy that the Jets aren't in Minnesota because there has been some ugly, ugly performances on Black Friday by the Jets in the past. Mm-hmm. I think the next worst place to be is Vegas. I mean, they're probably going to have the day off after that Kings game. And I'm sure the fellas will go out, watch some football, and have a good time. Just hopefully they're ready for that. But anyways, we'll worry about Friday's game after L.A., but most importantly tonight. If you would tell me that the Jets were going to win, if I could say, okay, we got to win guarantee me one particular win of this week, it's tonight. It's absolutely tonight. Extend the lead over the Wild and everybody else in the division and stick to it. And you know what? Hey, when Jessi comes on, I'm actually interested to ask her if Minnesota fans right now are more geeked for the start of the Wild or the Minnesota Vikings, who had a bit of a close call yesterday, having to go to overtime after getting a touchdown and an onside kick and a field goal in the last 30 seconds by the Bears. But pretty good times for Winnipeg fans right now, and certainly good times for Minnesota fans. But listen, the big bit of news, Remis, coming out of the game on Saturday wasn't the final score and the fact that the Jets lost their 4th game of the year. It is the injury to Dylan Samberg, who is out indefinitely and placed on the IR after a very painful block shot where he broke his foot. Incredible guts by him staying out there and getting to the bench eventually, and you could just see how much that hurt. I was hopeful that maybe it would be a bruise and, he'd only be out for a couple days, but he's back in the city getting worked on, and that will create a large hole on the Jet blue line because Samberg has been phenomenal this year. And as we'll hear from Neil Pionk, I think a big part of the success of that group, as great as Pionk's played, has been his partner, Dylan Samberg, who the Jets are going to be without for the next foreseeable future.
Yeah, and Dylan Samberg really took a step forward this season, filling in with Pionk after Brendan Dillon left for New Jersey. So this is a big injury. He's a big guy. He blocks shots, and if we're using Nintendo ice hockey terminology, they don't have a lot of other big guys to fill in. They called up the skinny guy, Ville Heinola. It's almost perfect timing, Huss, as he just completed his 2-game conditioning stint with the Moose. And it's funny because the Jets didn't really have any injuries at all last season in the top 6 of the defense. Nate Schmidt and Logan Stanley kind of rotated, but it was pretty solid the whole time, and everyone's going to have to step up a little. Morrissey going to be taking on additional penalty killing role. That's what Arneal said today. So tough loss, Samberg, and man, is he tough? Sticking out that shift after blocking a shot that wasn't anyone's shot. That was a Steven Stamkos shot off the top of the foot. He does have some shot blockers on the sides. Got him on the top. Missing the homecoming game us here in Minnesota, as so many Jets from Minnesota ties, and they always seem to always play around the holiday season.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm actually kind of choked at myself for not paying attention to this schedule a little bit more. I was thinking about this yesterday, like why did we not drive down to go to this game tonight and do the show in Minnesota before it? I mean, a huge matchup. I'm sort of kicking myself on that. It would have been a fun, quick roadie to get out and go to, watch some football down there yesterday, and then maybe set up shop at Tom Reed's and do the game tonight.
Hey.
I will make a point of trying to do that for maybe the other Minnesota game later on this year. By the way, Connor's in the chat. He said RIP the mentions after he did that clip. Great to see Connor here, and great stuff. If you did not see WST Sunday Live, especially for all you Villy stands out there, great conversation with Connor, Jacob, and Liz, and a lot of Villy Hainola content. So if you haven't watched that or listened to it yet, check the podcast feed or the YouTube preferably, and give it a look. And of course, leave a comment as well for the great work that Connor, Liz, and Jacob and the gang are doing. That, and of course, WST this week, Jets this week, also available with Connor coming out of the weekend. So make sure to check in on all that. All right, let's hear. Well, first off, let's hear from Scott Arniel describe the Samberg injury. Bad enough to lose a game, but when you lose one of your top 4 defensemen, that really hurts. Much like Dylan Samberg's foot really hurt after taking that shot. Here's what Arnie had to say after the Saturday game on the Samberg injury.
Yeah, he's got a broken foot, so it's not good. So we're going to send him home tomorrow when we get to Mini, and then we'll get it looked at when he gets home.
We're used to seeing him block so many shots and just get up. Did you have a sense that one might have been a little more of an issue?
Well, I mean, he stayed and he got up and kind of tried to finish the kill and then got himself off. But I've seen him go down before. He does that a lot. Obviously, blocks an awful lot of shots. And actually, he's got the shot blockers on the side. I think this one hit him on the top of the laces. So, he's a warrior, and that's a big hole for us.
I don't know, is there a typical timeline when you're talking about a broken?
They've got to figure out what we got here first.
All right, so that was from Saturday. We'll have more Arnie from today in just a minute, but quickly wrapping the weekend, here's what Adam Lowry had to say about the Jets' 4th loss of the season in Music City.
I don't think it was energy that was the issue. I think it was just the execution. For the most part, like our first period, we have some chances. Obviously, go into the first intermission down 1, but I think kind of the style of game was right. The game plan was there. I think come out in the second period, and it was a lot of shooting ourselves in the foot, turning pucks over in the neutral zone, turning pucks over in the high zone in our end, and if it weren't for comms, it wouldn't have been very close after the second. So obviously on the road, tied 1-1, you don't love how your second period is. You hope that you can kind of turn the page and come out with better third, and we didn't do that. So just disappointed with kind of how the way the game unfolded. I think, overall, it's not going to be blamed on a lack of energy. I think, even if you don't have energy, it's the reads, it's kind of the battle level. So, I think there's just another level that we got to get to and we expect to get to. So, you're smart to regroup and get ready for a real good Minnesota team.
All right, there's the captain, Adam Lowry. Very impressive duster from November on Adam right now. But let's get to today because, of course, the focus now moving forward is tonight's big game against the Minnesota Wild. And after the morning skate today, Arnie talked about the day off yesterday and a big one tonight with the team that's just 4 points back of them in the standings, the Minnesota Wild.
I mean, the back-to-back, our first of the year, and then obviously playing again tonight, so you're kind of into that 3 and 4 night window. And they just, chance anytime you can get away from the rink and just kind of reset. That's, get back at it here today and be fresh against, an opponent we know very well.
Yeah. Top 2 teams in the league right now makes for a pretty marquee matchup in late November.
Yeah, like we've talked about, this Central Division doesn't get any easier, and everybody's a tough out, and these guys obviously have been having a great start just like us, and we know what they're about, and we saw them earlier in the year, and they're banged up a little, but at the same time, they've found ways to win hockey games. They're well structured. They got great goaltending and good specialty teams.
All right. Well, internet chat boards and our chat rejoicing because after a year and a couple months of terrible luck, Ville Heinola is finally good to go. Finished up a 2-game conditioning stint on the weekend with the Moose. Joined the team yesterday in the Twin Cities, and Ville Heinola will make his debut today. Here's Arnie on the D pairs with Samberg out and Ville Heinola coming in.
Yeah, we got him to play a couple of games with the Moose this past week, and kind of getting himself since all the way back to training camp, really prior to training camp, being able to kind of get involved with stuff. So, I just want to kind of move him in slowly here, get him in the mix, get him feeling comfortable. Obviously, the pace is going to be even higher than what it was on the weekend for him. So, he's a mobile, real good pass first defenseman, and that's just we just want to get him comfortable and get out there and get feeling good, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
In terms of the PK, I noticed during your drills this morning, he was doing some work there. Do you envision using him in that role?
No, probably not yet. I mean, especially coming off what he's coming off of too. So, J-Mo is going to get a little bit more. Millsy will jump in there as well. I mean, Hayden's going to have to jump out with that first group. So, it depends where we are, obviously, on the shifts. But Hayden's he's going to get some bigger minutes, and that's a good opportunity for him.
Yeah, so obviously Morrissey and DeMello will stay together, but Hayden Fleury is going to move into Dylan Samberg's spot for tonight, playing with Neil Pionk, and Heinola will make his season debut playing on the left side with Colin Miller. Here's Arnie a little bit more on Ville after all the bad luck he's had, finally getting an opportunity to get into the Jet lineup.
Yeah, it's just been a long ride for him, like we've talked about. A couple times there, him pretty much making our team 2 years ago and having the injury, and then it was unfortunate what happened in training camp. But it is what it is, and that's why we said to him that he's waited long enough, and we wanted to get him a couple of quick games down with the Moose, and now it's a case he's here and go show us what you can do, and he's pretty excited, and I know he's been waiting for this moment for a long time.
Neil Pionk kind of touched on it in there, saying it can also kind of act as a little bit of a morale boost because you come out of the Nashville game that doesn't go your way, and then you lose a defenseman like Samberg. But to get a guy that looks to be pretty popular in that room, and everybody knows what he's gone through, it can be a little bit of a boost coming in.
Yeah, it is, and the guys love to see Ville around, and he's got a great personality, and he's got a skill set too that that can really help us. Like I mentioned, he's a real good puck mover. He's got good vision. Offensively, he's got a lot of instincts that way, and he recognizes that he's got to put his assets out there each and every shift, and everything else will come along as it moves into each shift into the game.
All right, so it is Ville time tonight in the Twin Cities. Heinola gets his first start of the year. He'll be with Colin Miller on the Jets' third pairing. One more quickie from Scott Arniel from today. Update on Dylan Samberg.
Well, he just got home there yesterday, so we'll follow through. But we're looking at extended. Yeah, it'll be a week-to-week type of thing. It's broken. So. Okay.
All right, so a few weeks in all likelihood, week to week. I'm sure we'll get some updates when the team is back briefly for that game, I guess, next Tuesday against the St. Louis Blues before a few more games on the road and then back for a little bit more home cooking at the Canada Life Center later on in December. But let's hear from Ville Heinola himself. He talked this morning about the journey back to the NHL.
Yeah, it's been a long journey for me, for sure. Ever since the injury happened last training camp, it's been a struggle to get the ankle feeling good. But now it feels great, and super excited to be back.
We often talk to athletes about the physical side of things. What's the mental side of that like for a young player like you to have, the excitement to be taken away the way it has, not just once, but twice now?
Yeah, I think that's the toughest part of the injury. Just not being able to play, Every time you watch the team play, you just want to get out there, and it kills you inside when you can't play there. But I'm just happy it's over now, and I don't have to worry about that anymore.
Looking back at some of the notes I have, I believe on the one day in training camp that you did skate, you were with Colin Miller, so I don't know how much of a just getting back on the bike it is, but how do you guys kind of prepare to play together today?
We've been talking a lot, obviously we haven't played together yet, but like he's a great guy. He talks a lot, so he should make my job pretty easy to play with him. And he's obviously a great player, so I think we're gonna fit pretty well together.
All right, so there's Billy on tonight. Now, here's just another quick clip from Hanela on just how he felt getting into those 2 games with the Moose on this past week.
I think it helps a lot. Obviously, it's been a while since I played before those games, so just getting my legs and everything back to where it was. And yeah, like I said, it's a little process to get back to where I was, but just happy to be back.
Did you feel a noticeable difference Saturday compared to Thursday, just in terms of the energy level?
I mean, yeah, I feel like I have more power in my legs on Saturday. You know, yeah, I think it takes a little bit to get back in the game shape, but I've been working hard on the gym every single day, so I'm not really worried about my condition.
You can relate as well as anyone to the disappointment of suffering an injury, so when you see a teammate like Dylan Samberg go down, heart probably breaks for him, right?
Yeah, I mean, those are the toughest part of the hockey injury, and you know, every time you see a guy go down, it's not a great feeling, but for me especially, I know how it is to not play and be out for a while, but I just hope he has a quick recovery. I will be back soon.
All right, so there is Ville Heinola. We'll talk more about that. The weekend, tonight's big game, Rennie is coming up. Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. Just before we bring in the Ren Dog, huge thanks to our friends at Rolly's Transfer for their great support of WST. Folks, if your 2025 involves a move, we know how stressful that can be, but good news. The folks at Rolly's are there to take as much of the stress out of that move as possible with the white glove treatment that they are famous for. Family owned and operated in the city for over 60 years, the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba. What you're going to want to do is check out their website with all of their services at Rollies.com. But when you're planning your next move, make sure to go top right corner, click on request an estimate. First things first, put in the promo code WST for a special discount on moving services and moving supplies. And then let the folks at Rollies know when you're moving, where you're moving, and what you need to move. And they'll turn it around quickly with a great quote to get you set for that Rollies white glove treatment onto your next destination. For all of your moving needs, make it Rollies the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba for over 60 years. Find out more, request a quote today at Rollies.com. And I guess it's here, folks. I think this snow is going to stay, which means winter's pretty much here. Now, it hasn't gotten too gnarly yet, but you know it's going to. And now it's time to get ready for winter before winter gets you at Manitoba Battery. No one likes freezing their ass off trying to get a car started in minus 30 temps in the dead of winter. Manitoba Battery can help you avoid these frustrations before it's too late. You can get your battery tested for free at either Manitoba Battery location, Logan Avenue, or Dover Court in the South End. And if it needs to be replaced, you'll save at least $10 off the battery you need, making the best battery prices in Manitoba even better. You can also get ready with booster cables, 12 footers for $19.95, 25 footers for $59.95, and a 200 amp jump starter for $129.95. Keep warm and get ready for winter before winter gets you at Manitoba Battery with free home delivery on purchases over $60 and 2 convenient locations to serve you. Go to manitobabattery.com to learn more. And listen, just before we bring in Ren, Black Friday deals are here, and F Apparel is kicking off their Black Friday sale with their biggest event of the year on now until December 2nd. Check this out, gang. Custom suits starting at $349.95, ties from $19, and custom dress shirts from $49. You can shop online at fapparel.com. That's EPHapparel.com. Or visit their showroom at 190 Smith Street to take advantage of these incredible deals. Black Friday sale on right now at F Apparel. Don't miss your chance to suit up in style. All right, let's welcome in our pal Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet and KNR. Rennie, how was your weekend in Nashville? I did get some reports that there was a man wearing a headband late night at Kid Rock's, just really giving her right now. Was that you?
I would I would like to say that
Hold
was
on a
me,
sec.
but,
Hold on a sec. Remo, you got to turn the echo off.
Good to go? There we go.
Yeah, you're good. Sorry, I don't know why he does that.
I'd like to say that was me, but I actually had one of my most tame nights I've ever had in Nashville afterwards. Myself and I took Harn Ryan Singh, who called the game out on the town after that. It was his first time to Nashville. So we hit up some of the standards like Tootsie's, of course. I wanted to show him that, and then Robert's Western World. But we very much took it easy. We both had flights the next day. And Harn Ryan's a calming influence in my life, the kind of guy who keeps me from going into, the kind of things that even have you land on being headband Rennie in the first place. So good on him.
You were there in the building. What'd you think of Saturday night after the Jets got that win on Friday in Pittsburgh?
I wasn't in Pittsburgh. I went directly to Nashville, so I didn't get to see what happened in Pittsburgh. Nashville. So this is an interesting one to me because I think you take a look at where the Winnipeg Jets are right now. It is extremely, extremely hard to be. What are they? 17 games over 500, or what is it? 13 games over 500. I'm not going to do the math right now.
13 now. 17 minus 4. 13.
13 games over 500, and there you are, trying to keep motivated, right? In a situation like that. Now, one of the reasons you keep motivated is because tonight they go up against a team they play that is like surprisingly staying right with them and put themselves in a situation to tie or even surpass the Winnipeg Jets. If they beat them tonight, they have a game in hand, win that game in hand, and by virtue of them beating the Jets, that would put them ahead of them in the standings. So that's a little bit crazy, but it's hard to come out and play the kind of hockey the Winnipeg Jets have played for the vast majority of the year, all year long. And so I take a little bit of that. I don't think the Winnipeg Jets had, their fastball. That said, I think you have to give credit to the Nashville Predators. They looked a lot, Huss, like what I think everyone thought they were going to look like. Great goaltending, that kind of grinding style that we saw them play last year that gave them success, with some offense added in by the likes of Steve Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, and that's exactly what we saw from that team. So while I thought the Winnipeg Jets were the better of the two teams in the first period, I also thought that Nashville ground them a little bit, got a goal, put the Jets in a place where they had to chase the game, handled that well, slowly and inexorably took the game over in the second and the third period. Now we have to point out that the Winnipeg Jets were playing the back end of a back-to-back, but I'm not one of those people who likes to say, oh, the Jets would have won if, or they would have won that. Leave that to the fans who can't stomach a loss. I think you need to take a look at this one and say, there's been some signs of the Nashville Predators, who are one of the lowest teams in the league right now. There's been some signs of them starting to show who they are supposed to be. I think that game against the Jets was the very best example of what that team should look like. So give them credit, but also acknowledge that the Jets maybe weren't at the top of their game on that.
Yeah, listen, I think that's totally fair. To be honest, I thought both goaltenders were awesome.
Phenomenal.
And listen, if Saros doesn't make one of those big saves that he made in the first period, or maybe the first half of the second period, maybe the game script goes very differently. But he was full marks. And to your point, Ren, this is a team that it seemed to feel like they were playing with a level of desperation that frankly begats their situation. I mean, they are right now trying to save their season. We all know what the ugly numbers are if you're outside of the playoff line looking in at U.S. Thanksgiving. Well, that time is here, and there's not enough time for them to get there. They need to start catching up right now, and I think that they were ready for Winnipeg. They knew it was a good spot. They knew it was a game that they had to have, and they did it. Listen, losing a game is not a big deal. Losing a top four defenseman, however, can be. Tough break for Dylan Samberg, the way he's played so far. What do you make of the whole of Dylan Samberg that he puts in the Jet Blue line now that he'll be out for a few weeks, according to Coach Scott Arniel, after breaking his foot?
Yeah, I haven't dove into the goals above or goals below expected. I'm doing the eye test on this one here, Huss, but I'll say this. I have thought Dylan Samberg has been very quietly one of the most impactful Jets on the roster this year. And I've said this, if you go and look at his game, I've seen about 6, 7, 8 examples this season of a cross-ice pass that no one on the ice sees coming, that if it gets to its intended target, there's not time for Connor Hellebuck or Eric Comrie, who's ever been in the net in these situations, to get across, and it's a one-timer into the back of the net. And it's a great play by the opposition teams that are playing the Jets, and everyone on the Jets is not expecting it except for Dylan Samberg. And because he's huge, because he's 6'5", because he's got that huge, that long stick and that reach that he has, and because he's very, very good at dissecting the opposition and taking away that passing lane at the last second, by my count, Huss, I think that there's been 7 or 8 goals that he is personally responsible for taking off the board. And we just don't see it because not a lot of those passes are getting through because he is so good at shutting that down. So I think that this is going to be a very, very challenging loss for the Winnipeg Jets. Dylan Samberg has opened up Neil Pionk's game, and he's shut down the opposition's game. And that, to me, is, a big plus and a big negative, that you take those out, and it has the potential to kind of tilt the balance for the Winnipeg Jets. I'll say this. Last year, I see this year as a continuation of the Rick Bowness system with some tweaks that have worked out really well by Scott Arniel. But the Winnipeg Jets over the last number of years have done a really good job of handling the loss of some really key players to injury. Kyle Connor comes to mind, Gabe Vilardi last season. And the Jets have done a phenomenal job of surviving that. But I honestly think this will be one of the most challenging losses to the Winnipeg Jets lineup that we've seen in the last number of years.
Oh, listen, I totally agree. And listen, your point is well taken about what Dylan Samberg is providing the club and Neil Pionk. And we've got a clip later on we'll say about, Pionk's having a monster season right now, but he's doing it as part of a pairing that's been playing big minutes. And Samberg's been huge. And I mean, even before he got hurt, Ren, I don't know if you remember that play in the game. Like, he has a whole new level to his game of confidence offensively. He had that rush, and I think it was passed over to Kyle Connor, and Kyle Connor gave it right back to him, and he almost scored on that 2-on-1. I mean, he really had been contributing in so many different ways, which I think then is going to put the onus a lot more on Josh Morrissey. I mean, that top pairing is going to be playing quite a bit. Of course, Hayden Fleury moving for the time being up into the Samberg spot with Neil Pionk. And I guess the player that everyone's excited to see after the terrible luck that has star-crossed him for the last 14 months, Billy Heinola coming back in. I'm going to send this to the chat, the Why Not question of the day for Not Autocorp over at Waverly and McGillivray. I will ask the chat to pop in with what are your expectations for Billy? Kind of over this next little bit, considering what he's been through. Put that to you, Sean. I mean, it seems like Arniel is trying to not put too much on his plate right away, kind of ease him in. It's been a long time since he's played consistent minutes of any pro hockey. He got the 2 games into the Moose. I mean, how do you think that they'll handle this? And what are you looking for from Billy when he gets out on the ice tonight and the rest of this week?
Well, I think this is both the best time for Ville Heinola to come into the lineup and the worst time. And I'll say that. So it's a way of saying manage expectations, because what the Jets are going to lose in Dylan Samberg, you don't replace with very many players in the league. And I don't think the kind of game that Samberg gives you, you don't replace it by putting Hayden Fleury up into that spot, and you don't replace it by plugging Ville Heinola into the lineup. So manage expectations. If things kind of get challenging for the Jets defensively and things like that, people are going to have a tendency to say, well, Ville Heinola came into the lineup and it just shows you that he doesn't do this and he does that. No, he's a different kind of player, so you have to take his strengths. I think the Jets are smart to take and put Hayden Fleury into that spot alongside Neil Pionk, because he plays more a similar of a game, like let's just focus on defense, let's shut things down, allow Neil Pionk to continue doing what he's doing, and then you bring Ville Heinola in. So it's the best time to bring Ville Heinola in, because now he finally gets this runway that everyone has been calling for this player for so long. Like, he's going to get his opportunity now. And even if things got challenging for the Winnipeg Jets, he's got time now to kind of work this out and to showcase what he needs. So I don't think it's going to be easy. I would expect it's going to be challenging for him at the very start because he's only played those 2 games. Yeah, we heard him talking in that clip that you played that he's been in the gym and he's been staying fit, but hockey game fit and getting up to speed game-wise, especially at game 20 of a season, especially on a team that moves the way the Winnipeg Jets do, that's something you just can't replicate in practice. So I think it's going to take him a little bit of time, but hey, the Winnipeg Jets and specifically Scott Arniel have done a really, really good job this season of getting behind certain players that there may have been some questions about or doubts about or lack of opportunity for. I'm looking at you guys like Cole Perfetti and Nick Ehlers, guys that Scott Arniel has come out and basically like put it up on the billboard. I'm a huge fan of these guys. They're going to get an opportunity. Ville Heinola is another one of those guys. I think that vote of confidence from their coach puts them in a good spot to say, okay, I just have time to go out now and play my game and showcase what I'm capable of doing. So because of the runway, because of the vote of confidence, because of the confidence that I believe is going to spin off from that, I think we are going to see the best version of Ville Heinola at the NHL level, which shouldn't be more difficult to show because we really don't have a huge book on Ville Heinola at the NHL level.
No, you're right. I mean, what I would like to say to everyone that is justifiably excited to see Ville come in is to give this young man a little bit of time to get into the lineup. And, you know, if things don't go well in the first game or the second game, let's not bring out the flamethrower with hot takes that, I mean, like, he basically is 2 years removed from being in the National Hockey League.
Right.
I mean, and that injury last year that cost him the first half of the year, he was playing catch up the entire time. And then, of course, missed basically all of training camp until he was able to practice a little bit and has gotten 2 games so far. So I do think the coaching staff, even if he shows glimpses, which hopefully we'll see right off the bat, I think they're doing him a service by not throwing him right in alongside Pionk or playing more at. Now, best case scenario is he very quickly shows that he's good to go and is making a positive impact when he's on the ice and can get himself into conversation for playing more. But I really think like this week, and think of the teams that the Jets are playing this week, Rennie. You got Minnesota tonight, the Kings who've had a great start, a very good Vegas team on the weekend. I mean, he's going right into some high-level competition. Yeah. So, you know, just to go out there, play his game, hopefully take care of things defensively and make some things some positive things happen. But I do think it's going to be a work in progress, and I don't think anyone should expect peak Ville Heinola tonight in his first shift, coming off considering what he's gone through.
Yeah, and I will say this, like, I do see a sneaky opportunity in here, right? Because you've got Colin Miller, who he's playing beside, who can kind of play that role of the veteran who's, you know, been around long enough to look over and say, okay, here's what I think that this player who's trying to find his way in the NHL needs from me right now. But we know that Ville Heinola's strength is the way he moves the puck, the way he can get it out of the zone, those kind of things. Scott Arniel has said that's what he's looking for from this player. But keep in mind, Colin Miller has one of the hardest shots in the NHL. We saw a couple cases early in the season of him unlocking that. So if Ville Heinola gets out there, yeah, it's the third pairing, so it's sheltered minutes, right? You've got a veteran beside you who's going to try and shelter you as well, so that's a good situation. But add to this the idea that Ville Heinola is going to have an opportunity not only to kind of show what he can do on the offensive side of the puck with a team right now that is scoring goals by the boatload, the highest scoring team in the NHL, but also there's an opportunity for him to maybe, just maybe, unlock the shot of Colin Miller. This could be a great situation for Colin Miller to be able to get that. And listen, what do you tell young players when they come in to the league? Just keep it simple, right? Keep the game simple. Well, there's no more simple way to manufacture offense than to just get shots from the point, just get it on net, right? So if that's the mandate and you've got the hardest shot in the NHL on a line with you and you're very good at opening up shooting lanes for the players that you pass the puck to, there could be a real sneaky opportunity here and a real good pairing that, you take a look at it from the outside, this could really work.
Sean Reynolds of Sportsnet and Kenny and Rennie fame with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Hammer coming up. We'll talk a little CFL offseason, and we will be heading back to the Twin Cities to tee up this one tonight with Jessi Pierce. But Ren, this is not as much about tonight or the weekend, but I'm wondering where are you at right now on how Cole Perfetti's playing right now? Is he in a bit of a slump, do you think, or just he's playing well and the numbers just aren't quite there?
Well, he's in a slump, no doubt. I've said this before. Cole Perfetti, I think, does really, really well in games where the other team is just interested in getting into a horse race, right? If you go back and you take a look at the points that he's scored this season, he torched the San Jose Sharks. I think he also torched the St. Louis Blues, a team that now maybe that's going to change with Jim Montgomery coming in, but a team that for years to me has looked absolutely indifferent to the idea of playing a grinding hockey style. So it's one of these things that when Cole Perfetti does get his points, he gets them in bunches. And when he gets them in bunches, he gets them against a specific kind of team. So Huss, I don't think it's a fluke that now that we're getting into the more difficult, you just talked about it, the teams that the Jets are playing as of late are a more difficult style of team to play against. And that Cole Perfetti has got quiet there. So I don't excuse it. I think that, within the team that Cole Perfetti is playing on right now, the number one in the NHL, Winnipeg Jets, I don't think a coach looks and says, not everything is always perfect. So even if you're not getting the best version of Cole Perfetti, you're not getting a version of Cole Perfetti, Huss, that is defensively deficient, that is putting the Winnipeg Jets in bad spots. He's taking care of the baseline of what he needs to take care of for the Winnipeg Jets. He's not costing them. So a lot of young players at the NHL level, just getting a player who can go in and spend some time and spend some minutes and not cost you is good enough. But sometimes when you've got a first-round pick that has the offensive capabilities that he has, you want more out of that. I think the Winnipeg Jets would like more out of Cole Perfetti. Things continue like this for the majority of the season, Huss, and I think you're right back to where you were last year, where you're thinking about how you're going to fix that second line and get more production out of that line. So I do think the Winnipeg Jets, while they have time to figure this out, Cole Perfetti needs to show more than he's showing, and he needs to show it against a higher caliber of team and a harder caliber of team to play against.
Yeah, I'm with you. And kind of the reason why I brought it up, I mean, listen, he's gone a few games. He did have the assist against the Penguins.
Empty net.
He goes all the way back to the start of the month in that Tampa game where he scored. But for the 14 points of the season, half of them are in those two games that you mentioned. He had the 2-2 against the Sharks, and he had 3 against St. Louis, which brings us to this week. And I do think that this is in a lot of ways, maybe it's coming at a good time, because I think Perfetti, the way the Wild play, and we'll add the Kings and the Vegas Golden Knights in it. Yeah, this is it foreshadows the tougher divisional games and potential playoff style games that they're going to be in. And while I'm sure he's squeezing it a little bit and would like to be more offensively proficient, I think just the style of play and the level of play in these games, it's going to be one of those sink or swim sort of things, and hopefully that can kind of push him into, raising his level of play and also getting a little bit of confidence going, because he really does seem to be one of those players that when things are going well for him, it's like a snowball rolling down the hill. And obviously the other side of things, when things aren't going well, you have these longer stretches. But for Perfetti, that line and the team overall, I guess, this is a big week to show that they can, continue to elevate their game as they play some of the top teams in the loop.
Yeah, I mean, you take a look at a team, and I've said this before, or I said it off the top of the show. I think it's hard to stay motivated and play that level of hockey the Winnipeg Jets have. It's impossible to do it all season, and when you've got your 13 games above 500, that gets really hard. I mean, geez, you end the season 13 games above 500 after playing 82 games. You're having a pretty darn good season. You do it after 21 games, and you are historical, which is what the Winnipeg Jets are. But no doubt, we looked at it. The Winnipeg Jets continued doing well when there was a little bit of a schedule turn, but the first, I think it was like 13 games or so, they played two teams that were in the playoffs last year. So it was a schedule that was, let's say, beneficial to them coming out and having a historic start to the season. Now it's been about 10 games since, and they're still going, but we can also say that if we look at things recently, the Winnipeg Jets have lost 3 of their last 5 games, right? And one of those games was against a struggling Pittsburgh team. So their one victory, while as impressive as it was against the reigning Stanley Cup champions, you could look, and a lot of coaches do, look at things in 5-game blocks. That 5-game block for the Winnipeg Jets would suggest things are getting tough and things are getting tighter. Things are getting harder, and the schedule that you're talking about going forward sure suggests exactly that. The Minnesota Wild, one of the best grinding teams in the NHL, the LA Kings, when they have success and are on that game, one of the bigger, more grinding teams in the NHL. We all know what Vegas can do, and the Dallas Stars, we all know what they can do. So you're right. Back to the point about Cole Perfetti, I mean, you got to look at everything like an opportunity. So if you're Cole Perfetti and you're hearing, I don't know if he is, but if you're hearing the conversations that we are having here today about, him needing to play more in a grinded out style of game, well, hey, here's the runway for you. The next 4 games are going to be exactly that. If he comes out in those games and puts up, even a point per game, 4 points in his next 4 games, then Cole Perfetti is, a good way to silencing, someone like me who's pointing out the places where he's getting his points and the places where I believe he needs to get his points. So a good opportunity for Cole Perfetti. And a pressure test for the Winnipeg Jets, who have passed most tests with flying colors this year.
Yeah, I mean, geez, point a game this week. Sign me up for that. I mean, even getting 1 or 2, but just being, into the fight. And I will say this about Cole, and I've made this comment to just people that I've been watching the games with. I have been impressed with his level of the fight in his game. I mean, and listen, that's something that he is going to have to continually improve if he's going to be an impact player at the most important time of the year. And listen, this is as good of a time as ever to kind of lean into that a little bit more, take on the challenge of these teams coming forward, and hopefully with some good results can really kind of catapult him back to more production and obviously helping the team win. Hey, next week we're going to see St. Louis here when the team gets back from this road trip. How about Montgomery? What did he spend, like 96 hours on the
5 days? 5 days.
Unemployment line? Drew Bannister out, Montgomery in St. Louis. What'd you make of that move, Ren?
I was a little surprised just how quickly that it happened. And I mean, St. Louis explains afterwards that, basically Drew Bannister's not losing his job. This is just all about a really great coach being available. And I think we've looked at Montgomery, and I think people were surprised when you lay out what the record of that Bruins team was. Just how good he was, how quickly they moved on from him. But that's the Boston Bruins. They have a certain standard that they expect, and they adhere to that standard at all times. And it probably says something about, the relationship in the room between the coach and the players. And when it sours, and, there's nothing you can do about that other than as a management group, have your finger on the pulse of the team and make that decision quickly. But I can tell you this, last time Montgomery was on the market, there was a lot of teams that had interest, including the Winnipeg Jets, who hired Rick Bowness that year. I can tell you this, and I always bring up this season, I've never seen a series where 2 coaches had their fingers on the pulse of a series and their team the way that Jim Montgomery did when he was with the Dallas Stars in the second round of the 2019 playoffs, and Craig Berube did for the St. Louis Blues. They met each other in the second round, went to Game 7, double overtime. I covered that series, and by the end of the series, Huss, I think I remember making a joke on air, because what happened was every time one of those teams lost, their coach would make an almost drastic lineup decision, take someone of quality out, put someone else in. I think Vince Dunn was one for the Blues at that time, and he came in and scored the next game, and then they won that game. And then the Dallas Stars went and Jim Montgomery pulled someone out of the lineup and put someone else in, and they went and scored. And I think before one of the games, I made a joke about, well, this coach pulled that player out and put this player in, so obviously that player is going to score. And like 3 minutes into the game, he had a point or something like that. It's my way of saying I had a conversation with Montgomery at the draft this year about Craig Berube going to the Toronto Maple Leafs. I thought it was a great move for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Had a conversation with him about that series and brought it up. These are two guys who know their team, know their players, know how to push buttons. I mentioned it a little bit earlier on. I had a conversation down in Nashville at Robert's Western World with some Blues fans who just happened to recognize this, can come over and talk and get my analysis on the St. Louis Blues. The St. Louis Blues are a super skilled upcoming team that refuse to grind. And the Winnipeg Jets beat them time and time again. I forget how many games straight they've beat them, because the Winnipeg Jets say we're going to grind, and St. Louis says if you want it that bad, just take it. That is not going to fly with Jim Montgomery. So it's going to be interesting to see where the Blues go, because they're a young, skilled, up-and-coming team who I think have just missed the ability to, when going gets tough, the tough gets going. That will be Jim Montgomery's number one task, and I think he's a guy who can get to it.
Hey, what did you have at Robert's Western World? Is that the place that has the fried bologna sandwich?
No, I went in. I had so you can go get a $5. You get a Pabst Blue Ribbon and a fried bologna sandwich. And whether you have the fried bologna sandwich or not, you leave Robert's Western World smelling like fried bologna one way or another. I had to take Har and Rye in there, so I only had half of the blue plate special. I had a Pabst Blue Ribbon, but no bologna sandwich there, but it was great to be there. Great place.
Hey, listen, pal, great to have you on the program. We will look forward to another entertaining edition of K&R after the game tonight. Should be a beauty. Top two teams in the league. Minnesota's had a great start. Obviously, we know what the Jets have done. Cannot wait for puck drop and what should be a real interesting rest of this road trip for the Winnipeg Jets. Be well, and thanks for popping on, dude.
Thanks for having me, and I need you to say hi to Hammy for me, because he won't answer my phone calls. So maybe you can say hi to him for me. I brought on his blocked list, apparently.
Thanks, dude. There is Sean Reynolds, of course, K&R, after tonight's game over on the Kenny and Rennie channel. Yes, Hammer is going to join us in just a few minutes. Before that, though, I do want to get to some fan feedback brought to you by fansfirst.ca. Fans First is brought to you by fan feedback's brought to you by Fans First. Your best option for buying and selling tickets with no fees. What you see is what you pay. Also, the best customer service in the biz, and the choice for Winnipeg Jet fans with extra tickets to sell on the secondary market. Of course, we asked everyone what they were thinking about Ville Heinola and their expectations for him coming into it. T. Will at Huss. Are you saying we should give Ville a run of games before we judge? Uh-oh. That won't go over well with Rennie. That did go over well with Rennie, although T. Will's always taking shots at Ren. One of the fun internet rivalries we've got here on the spot. Our Steele, Ville's going to do great. At Jay Miller, Jets play as a team. That's why they'll be fine without Samberg. Top line. And Nick, by the way, shout out to Nick for having my back with some of those Wild fans on the weekend on these internet streets. Appreciate you, dude. Patience is a virtue, and I think there is going to need to be a little bit of patience with Ville Heinola. That being said, very excited to see him in the spot. And there was another great comment from Snackatoba. Just shout out to Dylan Samberg and how important he's been. How's this for a comparison? Samberg is Stanley Bryant. High praise for Dylan Samberg, and we wish him well, and hopefully we'll see him back in the not too near distant future. Fan feedback, again, brought to you by Fans First, by fans, for fans, no fees. Check out that site today at fansfirst.ca. All right, as we bring in Jeff Hamilton, huge thanks to our friends at Princess Auto. The Mega Smasher sale is on right now, online and at your local Princess Auto store. Of course, you can check them out on Panet Road, as well as out Portage Avenue West. And for you folks on the western side of the province tuning into Winnipeg Sports Talk, of course, Princess Auto in Brandon as well. The Mega Smasher is on right now until the beginning of December with the biggest and best deals of the season. Get your head start on all of that shopping for the holidays right now and get the best deals of the year at Princess Auto Mega Smasher. You can go to megasmasher.ca and princessauto.ca for all the great deals of the biggest sale of the season. Excuse me. And hey, with the holidays here, folks, you're going to be doing some entertaining. You're going to be doing some festivities at home. And of course, you're going to be giving away gifts. And if you are a whiskey connoisseur or have a whiskey lover in your circle, you're going to want to get down to Manitoba Liquor Mart's Stat to cop the latest invitation series, the Canadian Club Classic 18-year-old high proof, which was released at the beginning of the month, and limited quantities remain. This is the iconic Canadian whiskey brand Canadian Club's first ever 18-year-old whiskey. This elevated expression offers the well-known smooth, well-balanced taste of Canadian Club Classic, carefully aged and bottled at a higher proof for a full-body tasting experience. And the CC Classic 18-year-old high proof just awarded gold at the 2024 International Wine and Spirit Competition. $79.99 right now. Pick it up before it's gone, everyone, for gift giving, for entertaining, and maybe for your own liquor cabinet as well. The good stuff. Invitation series right now. CC Classic 18-year-old high proof. Get it before it's gone. And just as we bring in the hammer, huge thanks to our friends at Wallace & Wallace for their great support of WST. Of course, Wallace & Wallace are the fencing and overhead door specialists serving residential and commercial customers since 1946. If your property needs the security and protection of a new fence, they've got you covered with vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood fences. Excuse me. And if you need a new garage door, they've got the largest selection of garage doors in town. Give them a call at 204-452-2700. They'll come down and give you a free estimate. You can also visit them at wallacefences.com or pop down to their showroom on Lawson Crescent off of Kenniston. All right, let's welcome in the Hammer. Jeff Hamilton joins us now from the Pre-Press Hammer. How was the weekend?
Oh, sorry about that. I muted myself just because I was cursing when Sean Reynolds was sharing misinformation about our exchange yesterday. I'll remind Sean, good friend of mine, that I called him back a short time later, to which he did not pick up. Yes, so true, so true, so true. The fake news, but no, here we are. I'm doing well, man. Feeling like I'm finally normal since Grey Cup, I guess. Like, just I feel like I'm caught up on sleep, and now I'm ready to attack this week. I actually have today off, so it's nice to settle in with my weekly hit on Winnipeg Sports Talk and go from there. We'll see where the week goes from there. I don't know. It feels like a high point.
You know, I'm glad you did get some time because you were probably the busiest and hardest working guy at Grey Cup. Between all of your work for the Freep and some amazing work, that 4,000 worder about the entire season was, we saw a lot of things that were from that article maybe pop up in the Grey Cup.
Yeah, no kidding. Foreshadowing.
But for folks that didn't know, Hammer left at 10, went to Calgary, spent a few hours in Calgary, red eye from Calgary to Winnipeg, and then straight to the stadium for Bombers cleanout day. Hey, you got to do what you got to do to get back there.
With 10 minutes to spare.
We'll talk about, is that how close it was?
After my luggage was lost. Yeah, I literally I had 10 minutes to spare. I was the first one there, ironically.
We'll get to O'Shea in a minute, but what were the takeaways? What did you hear? And we spent a lot of time talking about this Bomber team. Listen, they've been through this before. How would you compare it to the last couple of garbage bag days after heartbreaking losses in the big game?
Yeah, it was kind of an extension of what was the situation or the vibe or the case after the game in the locker room. It was just more shock. I think guys were coming to grips with it, obviously a little bit better, a day later rather than freshly watching, that car accident play out in the fourth quarter. Surprise, shock, right? I mean, guys were saying much of the same things as previous years as far as wanting to get contracts done. There was a little bit of hesitation in voices, and I'm careful to even mention hesitation because it's just not one of those like instant snapback or you want to be back next year. Absolutely right. It was almost like a, yes, I do. There's just some work that needs to be done and, stuff like that, right? Almost kind of, playing your cards a little bit better than in previous years. I don't think that that's going to equate to negotiations. I just think that's more still trying to process the feelings, right? Even though this loss, their third straight in the Grey Cup, was different than the other two in that they got to, mourn the result a little bit longer than the last two that ultimately were finished on last minute in the case for Montreal, but a late drive as well for Toronto. So, it's again, more shock, more of maybe a wait and see approach. Nothing's going to change. It's just that nobody had that like, oh, I want to get back right away. I want to do this. I mean, everyone wants to do it. Everybody who has been a pillar for this organization isn't looking to go somewhere else next season. A year the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are hosting the Grey Cup. Very much the band will be back, or at least a lot of the players in it will be back. But it was just, again, more of that coming to grips with what happened and really kind of more of a look inward of something needs to change, right? How much needs to change? Who knows? I mean, this is a team that has gone through the last 5 Grey Cups. That in and of itself is a great achievement. Of course, winning 2 of those, but when you've lost the last 3 games, final games, something needs to change, whether it's process, whether it's personnel, whether it's whatever. Some of the change, I imagine, Huss, won't be up to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. We can get into that kind of stuff. But overall, I just think it was just a very disappointing end to what was a season that a lot of guys were looking at, comparing it to the other one, something we know players don't often do on this team is look at and compare to other years, but they did that during Grey Cup week because of the season, because of the 0-4 start, and then the 2-6 through 8 games to then rip off 10 wins in your last 11 games to win the West Division again and punch your ticket again to a 5th straight Grey Cup. So there's almost a confusion, like how much needs to change? Something needs to change, but how much do you need to change to a team that, besides the last game, was arguably the best team in the CFL last year?
The 2 guys that I think we all wanted to hear a little bit more from were Brady Oliveira and Zach Collaros. And listen, I think Brady, continues to hold himself to just such a high standard. And he was asked about, does he get into the coach's ear about getting the ball more? And, absolutely not. I mean, listen, we all know that wide receivers in professional football can sometimes be very diva-ish. Listen, Brady is as important as any player on that team. And if anyone would be in the place to maybe do that, I would say Brady would be that guy. And he said, absolutely not. You could see the disappointment from him. And I think some of that shock that you mentioned, just, trying to wrap their head around how it went so sideways. But I don't think you could have asked Brady to do anything more with the opportunities that he got. So much of it goes down to their inability to move the chains, and a lot of that was on Zach Collaros. And listen, we heard Zach, who is in legitimately a state of shock right after the game when we talked to him in the media room in Vancouver at BC Place. What did you think of how Zach handled things and where his head was at when you talked to him once he got back to Winnipeg?
Well, I kind of want to address Brady first off. Just that, I thought he handled it super well. I will say this. I think some of the comments that he made, if you read them in the newspaper versus watched them in the scrum, they can be taken different ways. Because I think a lot of the headlines, a lot of the push was Brady Oliveira wanting more in that game. And I think that's an honest assessment from a guy who was the best player in the Canadian Football League in 2024 and a guy who only rushed the ball 11 times, 2 of which came in garbage time, including a touchdown that didn't matter at all, right? So there's frustration there. There's no doubt frustration there. You mentioned my 4,000 word my feature about this season. A big part of that, or one of my favorite parts, if you will, in it was the maturation of Brady Oliveira as a leader. He's always been a leader. He's always been a guy who leads by example. I don't think there's a cleaner living guy in the entire locker room that isn't named, maybe Johnny Augustine, right? Maybe he's missing that 15 pack or 16 pack that Johnny has, but outside of that is one of the most cleanest guys on the roster. He puts in the work in the offseason. He saves dogs in the offseason. And I still think that because he's a little bit of a social media darling, he's a guy who wants to be bigger than just, a football player. I mean, when he does his business with the Bombers, he does keep it, to that vibe, that mantra, that philosophy that the Bombers have had, big and boring, right? Just want to know every week, team first, of course. And Brady rides that line incredibly well, while also being a guy who's very much out there in the public, wants to make a name for himself, wants to build his brand around him. And I think he's a guy that for the better part of the last couple of years, as he's emerged into being one of the better players and now the best player in the CFL, he's kind of walked around on eggshells a little bit with his own coaching staff, his own players, especially this year where he got a massive hike in pay, right? He's one of the highest paid players in the locker room. And with that comes expectations. So I think for him, it was really trying to work his way around some of that outside stuff, the stuff outside of putting your head down and trucking linebackers. And so I think for him, he went through that earlier in this year, particularly after that rough game. And I believe it was week 8 against the Argos, where they dropped to 2-6 and, had that emotional thing with his running back coach, Jason Hogan, who he gives a ton of credit to. And he just kind of became that leader. So now he's in a position where he's being asked, you got 11 carries in a game where it seemed like it seemed like anybody in their dog would have called more running plays, regardless of what the Argonauts were doing. If you look at what Brady was able to do against the Saskatchewan Roughriders in the West Final, that was a team that limited him in the season. That was a team that had a really good run defense. You look at when Zach Collaros got injured and Terry Wilson came in. Why is he attempting 4 passes rather than handing the ball off to Brady? Again, the answer from the other side, of course, is that they're stacking the box. Anyways, it was a situation where clearly I think everybody can agree to it that Brady probably should have got the ball a bit more. And I thought that he handled himself incredibly professional. If you go look back, he doesn't throw anybody under the bus. He talks very diplomatically about, what he's earned, what his dedication and his commitment to this team has earned him. And that's asking hard questions. And so when he's getting asked hard questions, I think he's handling it very well. And at the same time, talking openly about, what I think he feels he deserves within the structure of his team and where he falls into that. Moving over to Zach Collaros, it was very obvious that Zach Collaros was going through an internal battle of whether or not he should have played at the end of the game. I don't think anybody who spent even 15 seconds with Zach Collaros thought that he was going to somehow turn down the opportunity to go out there and battle for his teammates. So I thought the biggest takeaway in talking to him was, one, finding out just how severe the injury was. After the game, you obviously know certain details. You know that he had to leave. You know that he, whether it was a pressure cut or whether it was caught on a helmet and ripped or whatever, you knew that. You knew he had to leave. You knew he came back. You saw a glove you've never seen him wear before. It's pretty serious. He's warming up on the sideline, whether or not you want to evaluate his throws, and then you watch the game, right? So it's like we find out the severity of the finger was, I think, a lot worse than most people thought. I think most people think maybe it's a jam finger, maybe it's a cut finger. When we heard Zach Collaros talk about how he could see inside his finger, that it took 6 stitches, that it required an element of numbing for the pain, that when he got that numbing, his grip on the ball wasn't great, that he went to and said he tried to be as honest as he could to offensive coordinator Buck Pierce and obviously head coach Mike O'Shea, and they let him go. And then when he went into the huddle, it was telling the guys that, he can't trust his hand. He can't, and that to the receivers that, when he inevitably underthrew his passes, that he would need them to come back. He couldn't expect them to necessarily hit stride. So, those were the biggest takeaways in that. And obviously his internal struggle of whether or not he should have handed the ball off to somebody else or whether he should have stayed in there. I think there's, open for debate for sure. Certainly the play calling was questionable, but those were kind of the two main stars, if you will, of garbage bag day, and two guys that are going to play a massive role if and when the Winnipeg Blue Bombers can get back to a sixth Grey Cup in 2025.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, I'll co-sign everything you said about Brady. And I understand right now is a real tough time for Zach. But I honestly think that by focusing so much on the decision to come back into the game, it sort of buries the lead. The reason why Brady only had 9 carries, and we can talk about game planning, all of it. I mean, there was just no execution on the offensive side of the football. And in particular, Zach Collaros came back into the game with 6 completions in the game. I mean, they just simply were not able to move the chains. And I mean, listen, I realize you can say, well, you just got to give it to Brady Oliveira a little bit more. In the Canadian football, it's tough to run on first and run on second and keep on doing that. You have to be able to complete passes. And this is what really is concerning moving forward, Jeff. I mean, you can hang it on the offensive coordinator if you want. We can talk about the defense not getting a stop when they had to have it on that long drive. You cannot win championship football games against the best competition in the league if your most important player is not playing at a high level. And there's no way around it. This is 3 straight Grey Cups where Zach has not looked like the Zach that got the team there in the first place.
Yeah, I don't think that you can make an argument against that. You have to take into consideration too, and I've seen a lot of this online. All those things I agree with. I mean, you can jump on any one of those elements and blame it, right? I think there's a lot of blame to go around. I know I wrote a column about Mike O'Shea's decision screwing over the Bombers of not taking the ball away from Zach Collaros, but there's other explanations to why this team lost. I mean, they just weren't good. The execution wasn't there. It wasn't there on offense. As you mentioned, Zach Collaros had 6 completed passes. Things didn't look as smoothly as they had in previous weeks. You look at special teams, Lucky Whitehead losing a fumble. That obviously played a massive role. And then you look at a defense that just looked outmatched, right? It looked like almost the scheming, this whole idea of Jordan Younger's innovative defense just didn't work. While Nick Arbuckle struggled to find people downfield for 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe even as many as 5 seconds, there just wasn't enough pressure on him, and so he'd find them eventually, right? And they have skilled receivers. My point here is not to get away from Zach. We'll get back to that. It's that they played a pretty darn good Toronto Argonauts team, and I think Toronto is being massively disrespected when the line opened at 10.5 points, especially when you look at what Toronto was able to do to Winnipeg this year on 2 occasions, beating them twice by only a few points in each game, built or backed on an incredible display by their defense. So you look at their defense, and that's a scary front. I think what my personal opinion of Zach and his play, obviously you can't look at his stats. At one point, Huss, before they got this touchdown, he had a negative passer rating. I'd never seen that before. Like 158.3 or whatever is the highest you can get. I've never seen a negative 17.4 or whatever, exact number I saw of Zach's. Clearly he wasn't playing well. He was getting time, but I felt like it felt like Tommy Condell was calling the game, to be honest with you. And I don't mean that as a shot against Tommy Condell. He's just a very pass forward guy, a guy who, spent time obviously in Ottawa with Drew Brown. Why Drew Brown, and Zach was telling Drew Brown to go there, is a guy who loves to open up. We saw him attempt 61 passes in the East Final. Like, that's kind of what we've seen from the offense over the last few weeks. It didn't really, it worked in game, or even in the end of the season, it worked against the likes of the Edmonton Elks when Zach was throwing the lights out. It worked against Hamilton. It didn't really work against Montreal down the stretch. They kept airing the ball out. And then they get to the West Final, and you think, okay, this is the perfect marriage of offense where you have Zach throwing for multiple touchdowns. You have Brady eclipsing 100 rushing yards. In this instance, you didn't have the opportunities, and I agree with that. You didn't have the opportunities, but the game plan was essentially, it looked like I was playing you in Madden. It looked like I was just going to downtown, Disco Brown up the right sideline on every single play I had, and even doing it on 4th down when I punt. It was just guys were throwing it up. It wasn't the ball. Like it was the irony in it all, Huss, is that usually Buck has been boring in these games. He's been the guy who's done the dink and donk passes, looking like he didn't want to, give up any balls or wanting to play super conservative. In this game, it was like he told Collaris, just find the deepest guy you could find. And that's why they weren't getting opportunities. It wasn't like Brady was constantly getting stuffed in the run. They just went away from it. They abandoned it. They didn't even establish it. There's things you can do to get your best player going without forcing him to run between the tackles. You can get him involved in the passing game. You can do all of that. Looked like Buck Pierce wanted Zach to have a 500-yard passing performance in a year that he's been down in his abilities. So, yeah, I think it's a combination of a bunch of things. I think part of it is, ownership of Zach, obviously. Like, Zach's got to be better. He'll be the first person to tell you that. He's not sitting at home right now looking at everybody around him in the locker room and wondering why they didn't perform. I'm sure he's still sweating his performance in the biggest game of the year. There's nothing more that he would want, or anyone in that locker room would have wanted more than to bring the cup back to Winnipeg. But you have to look at his performances. I think you have to, the Bombers aren't going to do anything about it. I don't think that you necessarily have to do anything about it. You just had a team that ripped off 10 wins in their last 11 games and fell up short in a disappointing Grey Cup, but lit it up in the West Final. So I don't think it's about changing things. That being said, Zach's not getting any younger. So, this 2025 season, it's going to be a bit of a farewell for, I imagine, a handful of guys. The Bombers have been slowly and surely replacing, some of their veteran players with some younger guys. I think they're going to have to take a massive look at their leadership core, because their leadership core, whether it's the start of next season or by the end of it, is going to probably look drastically different than what we've seen in this era. So I definitely think if, going into next season, I think this is something that the Bombers have just done a horrible job at, is finding somebody to back him up. Like, they didn't even really give Chris Strevler any opportunity to flex his passing muscles or whatever before he injured his knee, right? I mean, how many weeks went by where you're like, when is Chris Strevler going to throw the ball? And of course, Terry Wilson got exactly one pass attempt in the regular season. So, they're going to have to take a serious look at their quarterback situation next year, in a year again that they're hosting the Grey Cup, and they're going to have a plan here. I mean, Chris Strevler's saying all the right things of wanting to come back, but is Chris Strevler the number 2 that you really want, or more importantly, is Chris Strevler the number 2 that you need in the event Zach Collaris goes down? Because clearly they hit a situation in that game where they didn't trust anybody that they had on their lineup, and gave the ball to a guy who couldn't throw the ball. So the Bombers need to figure it out. They need to figure out their quarterback situation, but there's no doubt in my mind, and certainly no doubt in their mind, that Zach Collaris will be the starting quarterback in 2025.
Yeah, listen, I mean, not to go back a couple months, but I mean, this reminds me of conversations we had on this program, myself with Remis. I mean, after Strevler went down, what happens if Zach gets hurt? And this was a combination of both. What happens if he gets hurt, or what happens if he plays at a level that is not going to get the job done? You don't have another guy to come in. Now, historically, I don't think they would have gone the other direction and yanked him. I mean, from a game.
That was never happening, no.
But I'll tell you what, after 3 straight, I think that has to be something that is on the table if they're lucky enough to get back to the big game next year, and it isn't happening. And I think there's a better chance of this next year, knowing that they need to have some sort of a succession plan. But I think there's also needs to be the courage of the coaching staff to be able to go in a different direction, even at the most important position, if they're in a situation where it is just not happening, like has been the case for the last three Grey Cups. Just while we're on the topic, I guess, of next season, Sergio Castillo
I was about to go off on what you were just talking about, but we'll go on to the next season if you want.
Well, I mean, if you want to. I mean,
well, not off, but I just feel like, I mean, you ask those questions like why isn't Janarian Grant on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers? Like, it's just, there's managerial malpractice in some of these things. Mike's loyalty to players and seemingly more power than Kyle Walters has to make decisions around the team. I mean, there's just things that are so obvious. The return game was so obvious. It was all season long, much like the kicking game in 2022. It was so obvious. And you just sit there all season long as you watch mediocre performance after mediocre performance, and you just go, when is this going to burn the Bombers? Like, it didn't burn them in the West Final. We mowed over the special teams gaffes in that because the offense and defense, stepped up to the plate and made up for those those misplays. But this year, I mean, it was staring them right in the face. It was a matter of not picking up Janarian Grant's phone calls. I mean, I know the guy's tough to get a hold of, but he wasn't super expensive. He's a super dynamic player. And now the Bombers look like they have egg on their face. And it was the same story with quarterbacks. I mean, it was great that Chris Streveler came and was going to bring a lot of energy to the team, but ultimately that probably cost you Jamarcus Hardrick, and so if you just wanted a guy who was going to go headfirst into the end zone and sign autographs, like just maybe manage your money a little bit better. And I just find that like it's just been so glaringly obvious in various seasons, particularly 2 of the last 3 losses in the Grey Cup, where everything matters, right? The margin for error. The Bombers aren't some young, spunky team that's going to roll over teams. It's very obvious that they were dominant in those first 2 years, particularly the start of the 19 playoffs with Collaros, and have slowly and surely kind of, regress. They need to be good in all those areas. They need to be good in return game if they want to be a dynasty. And I just felt that was unaddressed all season long.
Hey, quickly, Sergio's back, which is great news. He had a monster season kicking for the Bombers. We know how important that is. I imagine there will be some signings coming up soon. Are there any guys that you're expecting to hear coming back, in the next few weeks as we get into the holiday season?
Well, I expect guys like Patrick Neufeld to re-sign fairly quickly. I expect Stanley Bryant to re-sign fairly quickly. I expected, based on my conversation with him, Willie Jefferson, who said he likes setting the market and stuff like that, but based on his tweets, and this year not costing the same as next year, I don't know.
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Today's, so I don't know. So I'm assuming Willie Jefferson, given everything and every opportunity he gets here in Winnipeg, won't go for an extra couple shillings to the next local club. But I imagine he's back. I imagine most guys are back, right? Most guys that want to be back. Obviously there's going to be some difficult decisions made around guys like Adam Bighill, who, is undergoing a, rehab with his knee. There's also the potential for some changes in the executive, right? In the front office. You have Ted Gavea and Danny McManus, both interviewing for the vacant GM job in Hamilton. You have Buck Pierce, apparently the front runner. And, a lot of the stuff we talked about, Huss, before we left from Grey Cup has kind of come to fruition with the other things.
What's the latest on Buck?
Likely to come around. I'm assuming that he's going to be the next head coach for the BC Lions. I don't know why, when you consider what the moves, mean, like Ryan McMaden going to GM, being a big Buck Pierce guy, you see like there's changes made for a reason. They know who they want. I don't think Rick Campbell was a guy that they disliked or necessarily, just probably didn't believe he could lead the team into the future beyond next year. And nobody wants to go into the final year as a lame duck and have to answer those questions. You would think that they already kind of knew who they wanted, and Buck Pierce has been atop that list, and rightfully so. I mean, but whether you agree or disagree or whatever your feelings are with Buck Pierce, and play calling in the Grey Cup, he would be a terrific head coach. He'd be a terrific guy to run any organization because he's a tireless worker. He's a guy who, is very well liked personally and professionally. And so there's certainly a lot to like about Buck Pierce as a leader of a team. We'll see if he gets the luxury that Mike O'Shea got and didn't have to get the offensive or didn't have to get any, coordinator title to it, as, every other coach seems to have to do. But I couldn't tell you right now. I would just assume I'd put my money on Buck Pierce.
Yeah.
Getting that job, and we'll see what happens in Edmonton and so forth. And then also here in Winnipeg, who knows? Because if Buck Pierce gets the job in BC, Winnipeg needs to figure out who their offensive coordinator is.
Yeah, that will be a big hole to fill, despite some people being on Buck's case after another loss in the big one. Hammer, great stuff as always. Enjoy the rest of the day off in this big game tonight. We're going to be talking about it in just a second, coming up in the Twin Cities with Jessi Pierce. Thanks for doing this, dude.
Sounds good, my friend. I, like many, are looking forward to Villy's 2024 debut here. I think it's going to be an interesting game with the lack of, with only one real enforcer in Adam Lowry. Minnie's going to go after the Jets hard tonight. I think we'll see how the Jets answer back.
Yeah, I think they'll be a lot more physical than they were when they came here earlier this season. Have a great one. Cheers to you, my friend. And as we bring in Jessi Pierce, cheers from our friends to all of you at Little Brown Jug.
You train day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
We'll maybe be tilting a couple of those tonight while watching the Jets and Wild. Of course, big week over at Boston Pizza. We got 3 big games on this road trip for the Winnipeg Jets. Of course, a full slate of Thanksgiving Day NFL football and a Black Friday game as well. Boston Pizza is the place to be to gather with your gang to watch the big game. But as we get into the holidays, check this out, folks. When you buy a $50 Boston Pizza gift card, you'll receive a free $10 bonus card. And if you're purchasing $1,000 in gift cards or more, you'll receive an additional 10% in gift cards. So if you have a long gift list or need to buy for your company or office, that's a 30% bonus on gift card orders of $1,000 or more. And of course, BP is a great place for a holiday party. You can check out the new holiday menu in the dining room, casual party in the sports bar, or have the BP catering team set up and serve your office. More information at bostonpizza.com, or pop in for the game tonight and ask your server about those gift cards for the holiday season. And of course, you can get most of that holiday shopping done for the sports fans in your crew at Royal Sports, the original sports superstore in the Peg. The biggest selection of Winnipeg Jets merchandise for under the tree. Tons of exclusives and great Bomber gear. And of course, all the NFL, all the National Hockey League, international soccer, you name it. And of course, the biggest hockey selection you'll find anywhere. Full equipment, goalie equipment, all the way right down to pucks, stick tape, skate sharpening, and the biggest selection of skates as well as winter is here. Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway. Follow them on Insta at Royal Sports Winnipeg for the latest merchandise drops, sale information, and holiday gift ideas. All right. It's been a minute since we've had Jessi Pierce join us. The bar down Butte herself joins us ahead of the renewal of the Jets-Wild rivalry. Jessi, what's going on? How are you?
I'm good. How are you? It's a good night for hockey, that's for sure.
I'm great. Well, my mentions have died down from Friday and Saturday after Connor clipped my thing of giving the Wild a hard time for the whiteout. It was there was a lot of heat in the old inbox for a few days, but tonight we focus on the game. Let me ask you this, though. Are Minnesota fans right now more fired up about this incredible start of the Wild, or the Vikings, who dodged a bullet yesterday and sit at 9-2 on the season?
It's crazy. I don't think anybody had predicted either team to be off as hot and running as they are now. The Minnesota Vikings have kind of faltered. They've lost a little confidence. They've got wins, but not very good. Not very good wins at all, whereas Minnesota finding ways to win, but at least doing it in exciting fashion and convincing fashion, if you will, whereas the Vikings definitely brought us down to earth a little bit. But it's a state of hockey for a reason, right? We're in full swing hockey season, and tonight's matchup going to really kick it off as well.
You know, I don't know how much you remember from the game that these teams played like very early in the season. But I mean, I was at the game. It didn't really feel like a Jet Wild game, to be honest. It didn't have a lot of juice to it. The Jets ended up winning in overtime, but I've watched a lot of the Wild since then, and they seem to be more the Wild team that we remember. As opposed to that one earlier on. And I certainly expect to have a little bit more oomph, considering these are the top 2 teams in the standings. Who could have predicted that for a late November game? But tell us how the Wild have done it. They've got this big cap hit. The expectations, much like the Jets, weren't to be at the top of the league, and yet we're a quarter way into the schedule, and they are right there nipping at the heels of the Winnipeg Jets, who've had a historic start.
Yeah, I mean, you look at last year, returning much of the same roster, the expectations were low because Minnesota missing the playoffs last season and just underperforming, I think, to a lot of people's expectations. But at the same time, because of those cap hits, a lot of people were like, okay, that's fine. We're buying our time for the future. Although Bill Guerin and I think the team as a collective said, no, absolutely not. I mean, you can see how how detrimental a poor start can be. You can't win the Stanley Cup in October, but you certainly can lose it. Minnesota put themselves so far behind the 8 ball last season that I think they were all very determined to not be in that position again, to not allow themselves the opportunity to falter that far. So I think from day one of training camp, that was the vision. It was, we're going to come out, we're going to have guns a-blazing, we're going to have rebound years from a number of players, and that's what you're getting. Not only do we have Kirill Kaprizov, who, yes, unofficially will probably be in the lineup tonight for the Minnesota Wild, but you've got guys like Ryan Hartman doing much better. You've got Marco Rossi continuing to trend upward. Philip Gustafsson back in net has been a huge anchor for this team. So just a couple of the names that have truly helped reassert Minnesota to be better than they are. But even then, I'll admit it, I did not see them being number 2 in the league or performing nearly as well as they have been. So it's been a very pleasant surprise, but they're finding ways to win in different manners, which is really exciting.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, it's kind of funny. We could be having the exact same conversation about the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, I think everyone knew this was a good team. I mean, they were 4th overall last year before getting plowed by Colorado in the playoffs. And I think that bad taste of the end of that season kind of really festered over the course of the offseason. I'm sure Minnesota is sort of the same way, and they've been proving people wrong throughout the year. The one thing I'll say that's a little different, although maybe Hellebuck is our Kaprizov. I mean, in that, he is a true superstar, but, you take over games in different ways. Kirill has truly been the thrill this year. I mean, I think if they did a quarter season MVP vote, I would imagine he would probably get it. Listen, you've watched this guy through his entire career. How special has he been this year, and how important has he been to the Wild's success?
It's crazy because I think locally we've all recognized what a superstar Kirill Kaprizov could be. I mean, just from his work ethic to the way that he scores, the way he battles too. I mean, it's more than just being an elite scorer, an elite visionary on the ice. He is in the corners. He's doing the tough things too. And this year, John Hines has really unlocked him because he's getting double shifted. You're putting your best player out there on the ice more often than not. I think that's definitely helping. But Kirill on another level, which he continues to do year after year. Last year was better than the year before, which was better than the year before. So, sky's the limit, I think, for Kirill. Absolutely. And he's just been a phenomenal player. The way he sees the ice is unlike anything I've ever seen. He has that natural chemistry with usually Matt Zuccarello. Matt Zuccarello out with injury right now, but he's found that with Matt Boldy and Joel Eriksson Ek as well. But you can kind of put him in any position, and it's just been absolutely incredible. It's not even the fact that he's scoring either. He's creating chances. He's creating almost like 2 goals per game, 0.67 goals created per game is his official stat as of late. So it's just fun to watch. I love it. And his English has come so far. So we also love that. Kirill the thrill, baby. Let's go.
Now, I guess the other part of that is locking him up and keeping him Wild for a long time. And I'm sure there's a little bit of angst to that situation, which always happens. But it sounds like from an ownership standpoint that they've been very forthcoming, saying they will be the highest bidder, and let's get a deal done.
Yeah, without question. Craig Leopold telling media that early on in the preseason, letting us know that nobody will outbid them. And that's not a surprise. And I don't think for Kirill, while certainly you want to get paid, and Kirill's play this year has put him into that $14 million and above bracket for sure. I think for him, it's about winning. It really is. I think it's less of the dollar amount. It's more about winning. Had the Wild started off poorly, I can see Kirill saying, you know what, this is probably not going to be the best place for me. But because they are so hot, and because Bill Guerin has talked about the future so much and putting these pillars in place, the ones that are currently on the roster and the ones who are not yet here, I think it bodes well for Minnesota in the chance of keeping Kirill Kaprizov, because you're performing well with what you have. And knowing that Bill Guerin's wallet can open up a little bit on free agency has to have Kirill excited as well.
While we're talking about Kaprizov, we should kind of mention the guys that he's playing with. And, Boldy's had a great season, kind of bounced back from, an up and down year last year. He's over a point a game. But the guy, and I love every time you do the lines and just call Joel Eriksson Ek Jeek. That's now, we basically we've co-opted that acronym when talking about him. He's missed a few games. He doesn't quite have the points, but I got to say, this guy, I think, is truly one of the more underrated players in the National Hockey League, in that, he might not have the world-class offensive numbers because Kirill's sort of driving that train. But, I mean, man, as a 200-foot player that gives the coaching staff the confidence to let the Kaprizovs of the world do what they can do while he's on the ice, To me, he's a guy that probably doesn't get the credit that he deserves around the league.
He's not the sexy player necessarily, right? He's not out there getting the points, but he's creating those opportunities, and his net front presence is bar none. I have not seen anybody get under another player's skin too. There's something about Joel Eriksson where he looks at a player and you're like, I kind of want to punch you in the face. And he's told people that. He's proud of that fact, and it's the way he plays. You're right. He's a 200-foot player. He's big-bodied down there. He doesn't put up with much gruff. And you see how important he is to this Minnesota Wild team. If you go back a couple seasons ago when the Dallas Stars defeated Minnesota in that first round, that was a Minnesota team without Joel Eriksson, and you can see how off things are. Now, they've been fortunate to have Joel for most of the season with a exception of a broken nose that kept him out of the lineup for a little bit. But yeah, he is an absolutely tremendous player. Another very underrated guy, a guy that took a little bit longer to come to fruition, but now that he's another one that's going to just keep pushing it.
The breakout star of the Wild season last year was Brock Faber, who was, everything you could have hoped for and more. Sometimes the sophomore season can go in different ways. Obviously, the team's winning. He's playing a lot. Is this just more of the same that you saw in his rookie season?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the big thing. Brock Faber signing that 8x8 extension this offseason. And one thing Bill Guerin continued to reiterate to him, and one thing you could tell Brock really took to heart was, I'm just going to play my game. I'm going to keep playing the same exact way that I know how to play. And he's done just that. You see a couple mistakes that aren't as masked as maybe they were the year prior in his rookie season, but he's still eating up those minutes. He's still getting opportunities. He's been tossed up on the top power play unit. He's been playing a little penalty kill here and there. He's a reason that Minnesota is one of the best defensive teams right now in the NHL, if not the best, giving up the fewest 5-on-5 goals, second fewest goals per game and under 3. But Brock Faber, a huge part of that. And again, another very important piece to the structure that Minnesota is building toward as they become a cup contender.
Jessi Pierce is with us. You can check out her work at NHL.com and, of course, subscribe and check out the Bar Down Beauties podcast. I do want to ask you about the Four Nations because, listen, we're having a ton of conversations here. In all likelihood, we'll have Hellebuck and Kyle Connor representing USA. I think Josh Morrissey is almost a lock to be on the Canadian blue line. I think Mark Scheifele has a good chance for that. What are the conversations around the Four Nations around the Wild, and how many players in the Wild roster have realistic chances to hear their names called on the 4th of December?
I certainly think it helps when your GM is the Team USA GM, right? That can't hurt your chances.
We'll see them a lot.
Yeah. No, I think Matt Boldy, definitely his name is in consideration, considering he also was at World Championships. Brock Faber, another one who would have been at World Championships had he not been injured at the end of the season that year. So I think those two for sure for Team USA, big names, guys that are doing really well. As far as on the Canadian side, there's a little bit more to contend with, right? I would love to see, though, I'm going to put this plea out for Hockey Canada, Marc-Andre Fleury, just because we love the flower. The goaltending situation for Canada, not as strong as Team USA. You guys are going to find out how hard it is to go against Helly, right?
We're trying to get Hellebuck a Canadian passport in this next week. It's not working.
But if we don't have him, we got the Otter backing him up. So it can't go wrong either way with that. But I would like Marc-Andre Fleury just out of honor and fun, have him be your third goalie. Because also I think Canada could use him as a third goalie. He could be that guy. So that's probably what I'm looking at as I run up my head up and down the roster. Team USA strong, but that's probably about it.
Listen, in 2 years, we'll get the real deal. The full Olympics where everyone's participating. Mm-hmm. But I'm still completely here for this Four Nations. It's been way too long since we've had best on best. We got to see Canada go up against the U.S. once and hopefully twice maybe in the final. Yeah. But I will say this, for a guy like Kaprizov that is playing so much and having such an important role, there could actually be some benefit to the Russians not being in this and giving him a couple weeks to sort of get away from the game, rest up while all these other guys are beating the hell out of each other for their country.
That's what I think, too. I'm sure he will welcome a nice vacation. He won't have to go to an all-star game like he's had to do the past few times either. So I think he'll be able to just rest, relax, and be okay with it. I don't think it'll bother him. That's a lie. It will bother him because he loves competing, but it'll be a nice break for him as well.
So let's get to tonight. I kind of mentioned right off the hop, like the first Wild Jet game did not have a lot of juice in the building, it seemed. It was the quietest of games between these two teams that have had plenty of fireworks over the past few years. What are you expecting tonight when they drop the puck in XL?
I'm hoping for a little fire. Now, I got to say, I do miss / always love the American Thanksgiving game that we used to have with Winnipeg, right?
Sure
this year it's Chicago. Oh,
it's
yeah.
like 7-1.
Black Friday
7-2.
sales going on goals. Yeah, it was beautiful. No, but there was just always some extra oomph, right? Because you have people out of school, off of work, all of that stuff. So on Monday night, I am very curious to see what that crowd is like, because obviously we all know between Winnipeg and Wild fan, the crowd can get really feisty as well. I think they're going to be extra protective of Mr. Kaprizov. I know we all know the discussion that has always surrounded Minnesota in Winnipeg, but because he is coming off of that injury, as I mentioned, very likely to play, it'll be interesting to see that. And then in general, I think it's going to be a goaltending battle. Philip Gustafsson has had a tremendous start to his year as well. Again, a big reason that Minnesota has been as successful as they have. 9-3-3 with a 2.13 goals against average and a .92 for save percentage. So Gus has been driving that bus. I think it's going to be a goaltending duel because we all know what Connor Hellebuyck brings on the other end. I'm looking for a good one. So it might be lower scoring, but maybe 4-3. 4-3. I won't say who I'm choosing to win.
You know what? Speaking of Four Nations, I mean, Gus is making a big case to be on that Swedish team. And again, Sweden, Finland, especially United States, all have more depth than Canada in net. But I mean, honestly, if you were just looking at the body of work this year, you're not going to find too many guys that have had better starts to the season than Gustafsson.
And he needed to. He was given an opportunity, I think, starting last year to say, hey, you could be our starting goaltender. You could have the lion's share. Now, unfortunately, he got a little bit of an injury bug, and then I don't think he ever truly recovered from that, not just physically, but mentally. I think he lost a lot of the confidence that had made him so successful the year prior. So he went into this offseason very determined to come back. I mean, there was trade rumors swirling. There was a lot of unhappiness about the way he performed, and I think he took that to heart, as most players tend to do, right? So he came back very much in shape. He is tracking the puck better than I've seen him track. And he's really taken hold of that opportunity because, as we mentioned, as we all love the Flower and we want him to succeed, especially on his quote unquote farewell tour, Gus is the hot hand right now. And he's been doing everything he can to keep Minnesota in games that maybe they don't deserve to be in and win games that they do.
Well, it should be a great one tonight. Cannot wait. Always fun when these teams play, but even a little bit more when they're battling for the top of the NHL standings. Who would have thunk that when we started the season and saw these teams play in the first week of the year? Jessi, before we go, fill people in on where they can get more content from yourself on podcasts as well as written word.
Yeah, new episodes of Bar Down Beauties drops every Tuesday. Tomorrow's will be a little bit later to attest for tonight's game. Marc-Andre Fleury was our guest last week, so we've had a couple fun questions with him. Otherwise, NHL.com. I'll have the game recap from tonight in St. Paul up there as well. And you can follow me on all the social channels, Jessi Pierce, wherever that may be.
You know what? I was just saying to Remis at the start of the show, I'm kicking myself for not paying attention to the schedule and realizing this game was today and doing something with you in person down by the XL Energy Center. But we'll plan to do that later on in the season when the Jets are back in the Twin Cities. Thank you again for the time. Have a great one. Enjoy the game tonight, and we'll talk to you soon, Jess.
Thanks, as always. Talk to you.
Appreciate it. There is Jessi Pierce. Make sure to give her a follow on X, and you can check out her work at NHL.com. All right. Hey, speaking of this game tonight, do want to mention the Jets. I'm not sure if they still have how supplies are going, but a couple big sales for Black Friday. You can check out their socials and check out the site. 2 tickets and an Adam Lowry bobblehead was the deal, I believe, for the January games. They also had one for a Josh Morrissey bobblehead. And definitely circle on the calendar and get your tickets now for the WST holiday festivities, which is the next time these two teams will be playing. The rematch Saturday night, December 21st, Canada Life Center is our next game of the month. And hey, listen, it's going to be tough to beat the game last Tuesday. Sold out crowd, filled up section 316 with WSTers, and beat the Stanley Cup champs. But I'll tell you what, a win that night with another full building and a full section would be a hell of a way to get into the holidays. Again, winnipegjets.com/WST. You can maybe pick up some tickets for later games of the month for Christmas presents or your crew. but definitely join us for the holiday festivities, season's beatings. The Winnipeg Jets and Minnesota Wild, December 21st, the next Winnipeg Sports Talk game of the month. All right, let's get Remo back in here. And man, always fun talking to Jessi. She's definitely one of our favorites, a longtime guest when we're talking Wild. But this game, I think, is going to have a lot of juice tonight because, as I mentioned to her before, it was kind of surprising just how tame that game, and I believe that was, the third game of the season? But just how tame that one was earlier this year when the Jets won in OT.
Yeah, going back a month ago, looking at the 2-1 win, I don't really remember anything eventful. And usually when these two teams play, someone's sitting on Kirill Kaprizov, Marcus Foligno's causing havoc, punching guys in the back of the head. Ryan Hartman's doing Ryan Hartman things. So maybe with the two teams at the top of the Central, I think when the Jets come out now, they're getting teams' best game. You saw that on Saturday.
Big time.
I don't think you saw that on Friday, although maybe that is Pittsburgh's best game, unfortunately. So we'll see how this goes tonight. It's almost a year ago when we did have Ryan Hartman / Cole Perfetti in the face and all that. So there's always something going on between these two teams. Will it happen tonight? And for the Jets, how is this revamped defense pairs going to mesh? They hadn't made any changes all season, and other than the sixth spot, whether it's Stanley or Hayden Fleury. But now you have some reshuffling, new pairs, Fleury and Pionk. Hanel and Miller, how's that going to shake out? And Josh Morrissey taking on some additional minutes as well. So I'm looking forward to the game tonight. Big one and big slate around the NHL. Also big Monday Night Football games too. So big TV night. Going to need multiple screens here.
Yeah, great Monday nighter as well. We'll talk about that one in a minute. Cowboys informing me this can't be the only visit to Minnesota this season in the same division. There's got to be one later on.
Man, that's why the NHL, if it is, the NHL division's really dumb. If this is the only visit within your own division, you only play them once.
You know what, Reem? Just before we get to the lines, and again, if you popped in later, obviously Dylan Samberg's out week to week with this broken foot. I would imagine listen, if they could get him back sometime in December, I think they would absolutely take it. Ville Hanel is back in. We heard from him a little later on. But Neil Pionk also spoke about the loss of the Hermantown connection with his buddy Samberg, who is going to be out. Here's what Neil Pionk had to say about losing Samberg after such a great start to the season for both of them as a pair.
Yeah, it's huge. I know it's frustrating for him. He's had a couple injuries in the past, and again, just trying to do the right thing out there, blocking the shot. Unfortunate bounce, and it'll be a big loss for our team. We'll have to step up.
You guys have had a kind of remarkable stretch of good health on the blue line, going all the way back to last season and so far this season. How do you explain that, and how do you now deal with not having Dylan for a while?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like you said, a good stretch of health. Certainly guys playing through things. Tough decor too. I mean, there's a lot of tough guys back here, so playing through certain things, and replacing Dylan's going to be tough. He's probably one of our better shot blockers in the back end, so again, we're going to have to step up by committee.
All right, there is Neil Pionk. And you know what's funny, Reem? For a long time, we always talked about the Minnesota Mafia, if you will. We don't have, we've got still a lot of American players, but it's kind of more like the Michigan guys. Because really, Pionk and Samberg are both from Hermantown, Minnesota. But other than that, for all of the Americans on the club, not too many from Minnesota, unlike before where, you had Wheeler and Buff. Nate Schmidt was there the last few years as well. It's a little different, but certainly I'm sure Pionk will have many family and friends from the city. Unfortunately, people coming from Hermantown are only going to see one of their two stars on the Winnipeg Jets with Dylan out.
Wow, I just think Jets, and I think Minnesota. You mentioned no Wheeler, no Buff, no Nate Schmidt, Mark Stewart, Not on the Jets. Carson Coolman's moved on. They're all gone.
Carson Coolman, yes.
Yes, he's part of the Minnesota crew. New Toninato, he's on the Moose. I'm trying to think who else there is. So hey, Michigan. Now we'll raise the Michigan flag. I know the Jets did play in Detroit and had a nice game there before, putting up several. So hey, look, who cares if where they're from? Jets, Minnesota, I think always a good game, and it is shocking to hear this is their only visit. I thought divisions meant something in the NHL, but obviously they don't. If the Jets only go to Minnesota one time,
that is nuts.
Yes,
I thought you for sure played every one of your divisions 4 times.
I think there's some teams in your division you play 3, which is why it is so dumb that the playoffs are so division focused when you play some teams 3 times, like the same number of times as teams not in your division. So.
I think once they do the new CBA, I think we'll go back to 1 to 8.
You think so?
Yeah, I do.
Pray. Let's pray, because this new playoff format, I still call it new. It's been around for a while. Really dumb. Doesn't make any sense. So we'll see.
Hey, listen, let's get to the Coolbet lines. And as I mentioned earlier on, tomorrow, Remo, another chance for glory in the WST EST Lock Shop Poker Series. 9 p.m. tomorrow night, Winnipeg time. It gets going. This is our 4th tourney. It has been so much fun. Randy D got second in the last tournament. Remis got second in the first tournament. And Remis, I mentioned, Patty and the guys at Coolbet adding in a spot in a tournament to go to Costa Rica for a big Coolbet poker event for the top 2 finishers in the tourney. Of course, we'll have bounties on myself and Dusty, I believe Remo as well. What you're going to want to do, if you haven't already played with us, go to coolbet.com, click on poker, download the poker software, which is, it's an awesome platform to play on. And then you'll see, click on tournaments. There's a little magnifying glass. If you want to just put in lock or lock shop, it'll pop up. Enter. It's basically $30, 20 euros is how it's done. And tomorrow night, 9 p.m., with 2 added spots for a tournament that if you do well, you could end up going to Costa Rica. And we're very much eligible for that, Remis. So tomorrow's the night to have a big run on the tables.
Wow, that's crazy. So I'm gonna have to sharpen my my poker stick, because I haven't played that well the last 2. Maybe these bounties getting to me, affecting me. I got people coming after me. A little extra incentive.
I did last time too.
So I don't know. Can we get rid of those so I can play normally one time? Like, it's almost a curse finishing second. But hey, I'm happy to be in, and if that's what gets people active and playing, I'm happy to have a bounty. Bounty or no bounty, I can still take a run at the title here.
Listen, you did get second in the first tournament, so it's not like it hasn't happened before. One other awesome promo I just noticed, and we'll talk about this more on the Lock Shop in the next couple days. But the big turkey boost, a 50% profit boost on any NFL bet on Thursday. So what you're going to want to do, and you can click on this in the promotions if you want more information on it. But you pick your bets from the 3 eligible Thanksgiving Day games. And once you've selected an eligible pre-match parlay, the 50% profit booster will be available to apply in your bet slip. You just tick the apply 50% profit boost, and you'll see your extra potential winnings. Place the bet and enjoy the games. And if you haven't played a Coolbet before, you can use the promo code WST for a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit. All right, let's get to this slate tonight in the National Hockey League. This is a busy one today. Dallas is in Carolina to take on the Hurricanes. We'll go Canes. -130 for Carolina, +110 for the Dallas Stars. The Ovilus Caps are in to take on the Panthers. Panthers have lost 3 in a row, starting with last Tuesday here in Winnipeg. Follow that up with losses to the Blackhawks of all teams, and then at home to the Avalanche. They are home tonight, looking to get back in the win column. Panthers at minus 172. The Preds, looking to build off their win against the Jets on Saturday, are in New Jersey. Jersey minus 143 faves. The Rangers, big favorites against the Blues with their new head coach. Rangers minus 238. Vegas minus 138 faves in Philly. Very close to a pick'em between the Avs and the Lightning today. The Islanders minus 154 favorites against the Wings. I believe the Flames Senators is the Amazon game tonight.
Yes.
The Sens are reeling, losers of 4 or 5 in a row. Calgary just ran the table on home ice. They've been playing great, and yet they're still plus 132 underdogs. The Jets and Wild, just about a pick 'em. Winnipeg, a slight favorite at minus 111. Minnesota, minus 105. The Kraken are in Anaheim to take on the Ducks. Seattle laying 159 on the road. And the LA Kings in the finale, minus 225 favorites against the San Jose Sharks. Now, if we check out the exclusives, we do have a ticket for tonight. We put this together, a little prop parlay. Justin Herbert, 259 or more passing yards. Lamar Jackson, 2 passing TDs. And Ladd McConkey, 67 plus receiving yards. That is in at plus 355. And if you go to the combo cards, nice boost for this one today. We are taking the Panthers. We are over Washington. We're taking the Golden Knights over Philly. And we're taking the Calgary Flames over the Ottawa Senators. That one is plus 531, boosted up to plus 610. Available in the combo cards right on the main page. Now, as far as the NFL game goes tonight, awesome matchup. The Harbaugh Bowl, John versus Jim. The Ravens with John Harbaugh leading the way, minus 145 on the money line, 2.5-point favorites. Chargers plus 133 for the money line, and plus 2.5 at plus 105. Totals 50.5. What are you thinking about this game tonight, Reem?
I think there's going to be a lot of points. Look, I think the Chargers are kind of finding their footing here after the first couple weeks. Justin Herbert showing that he's a pretty good quarterback. They got their healthy receivers. And Baltimore, I think there's some concerns about their defense, giving up a lot of points. I know they can score them, but they had a tough one last week. So, the Chargers at home, for any other normal team, I'd be like, yeah, home field? Sure, I'll take a home dog. But we all know that there really is no home field for either of the LA teams, Hustler. So I think it's going to be tight. Maybe take the Baltimore and the 3, but I think the Chargers will make it an entertaining game. I think it'll be closer than last night's game.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah, oh my God, I hate myself for picking the Rams last night plus the points. We blew the partner parlay on that. Everything else went well. It's a pretty good day overall. And of course, did you watch the Chiefs game yesterday?
I was following the game log. I only saw a little on Red Zone, I think, but
Bryce Young was pretty good.
Bryce Young
was pretty good yesterday. I got to give him credit. I mean, the Chiefs sort of sleptwalked through the second half and, again, had to give it to Mahomes in the final 2 minutes to go down and get the win. But I have to admit, I'm impressed with what Carolina's doing right now. They just don't have the personnel right now. But tell you what, Bryce Young getting a chance to play some more games maybe isn't a total bust, the total bust that everyone thought at the beginning of the year. Man, like the witching hour yesterday was the craziest of the season. Like that Washington-Dallas game was all-time bananas. The Commanders scoring 2 touchdowns and a field goal in the final 3 minutes. And that, 85-yarder to Terry McLaurin to pull them within 1 with 20 seconds left. And what happens? They miss the extra point. And then the onside kick got returned for a touchdown. So kind of a bizarre a bizarre day yesterday. And then the Bears, first team all season to complete a successful onside kick. They scored 10 points in the last 21 seconds and put it to overtime. But the Vikes, to their credit, got the job done in OT.
Yeah, a couple surprising ones. You mentioned the Cowboys over the Commanders. How about the Titans, quarterbacked by Will Levis, who I thought was totally incompetent. He's seemingly finding his game with Calvin Ridley there. He's threw 2 touchdown passes there, 32-27 win.
Busted a lot of teasers yesterday, and that win by Tennessee.
Funny, you mentioned Bryce Young and the young quarterbacks. Anthony Richardson, he's now the starter for the Colts. It didn't quite go so well for them against the Lions, who are a juggernaut, losing 24-6. But the best young quarterback, I think, has Bo Nix, finding his game with the 7-5 Broncos. I think he's pretty awesome, too, for 273 and 2 touchdowns over the Raiders. So the couple nice games. The afternoon game's not really all that great. The Packers over the Brock Purdy-less 49ers, and the Seahawks, 16-6 over the Cardinals. Interesting day for football, but we do have a bit of the short week with the Thanksgiving games on Thursday. But first, tonight, winding it down, Monday Night Football. I think this is going to be a great game, the Harbaugh Bowl.
Harbaugh Bowl, 2 awesome games. This is definitely a night to get up to Boston Pizza, wherever you watch your games, and get the Jets on one TV, the football on the other, and hopefully, if your place is good, like BP and some other spots, you get the sound on. And tonight's a hockey sound on game, and then when the hockey's over, you can go put the sound on for the football game for the fourth quarter going forward. That is going to do it for us. We got to get this pod up so people can listen to the show before puck drop tonight. Tomorrow, we'll break it all down for you, hear from the coaches and the players after tonight's game, and look ahead to continuing the road trip in Los Angeles, California on Wednesday as the Jets go to the West Coast and then to Vegas for Black Friday, 7:30 Winnipeg time, 5:30 game time in Vegas. What an awesome sports day that's going to be. Chiefs Raiders at 2, Jets Vegas at 7:30, and a lot of hockey tonight, Wednesday and Friday. Very little hockey tomorrow. That's fine. We've got the Lock Shop Poker open. I hope you'll join us tomorrow at Coolbet for that. And then, of course, Thursday, it's all about the Thanksgiving Day slate in the National Football League. Thanks to Jessi Pierce, Rennie, and Hammer for jumping on today, Sean Reynolds and Jeff Hamilton. And thanks to all the sponsors that make the show happen each and every day. Great stuff from Michael Remis today. And all of you in the chat, have a great one tonight, everybody. Enjoy the football and, of course, the Big Jets Wild game. And we'll see you tomorrow live on YouTube at 1 p.m. and in your podcast feed a little later on. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Have a good one. We'll catch you tomorrow on WST.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.